Hi, this is Catholic Ben. Let me share a story about how I made the decision to follow Jesus personally. As a kid, I grew up in a Catholic family, in a family where my parents had made the personal decision as students. And so I remember, Jesus was a big part of my life until my primary school. It was a beautiful time of childhood, innocence, and really loving Jesus as a kid. It was amazing. But right after I hit primary school, it was in, then communist Yugoslavia. Slovenia was a part of communist Yugoslavia at that time. And if a kid came to primary school and talked about Jesus, it was not a very good idea, as you might imagine. Well, that was me. It was pretty bad. And, because of that, a resentment began to form in my heart against God. Why don't you make that, my fellow students, would like me more? Why don't you do, certain things? But he never seemed to answer those big requests that I had. So, in my secondary school, in my high school, I went, as I shared before, I went to a Catholic school first. And by the time I got there, I was this rebellious teenager. I didn't want to go to Mass. I went out during Mass for a cigarette. It all seemed so extremely phony to me. Everybody seemed like total hypocrites. It was just all fake to me. So I left the Catholic high school and went into a public one for the second half of my high school. And after finishing that, I didn't finish it properly at first, and I began working at a pub, days, nights, whenever. And so, in that pub, all sorts of things were happening. You could see all kinds of people. And I was, really morally degrading at that time, I guess. I started smoking, weed occasionally with my boss, and those occasions became ever more, increasingly. It happened, it came to a point when it began to happen daily. It was at that time that I received an invitation to go to a ski trip to Austria, it was very cheap at that time. It was it was actually an invitation by a group of evangelical students who, made the ski trip really cheap for us, but we would have conversations about faith in the evenings as well. And I remember that ski trip, and it was amazing. It was a time spent in the beautiful Austrian Alps. It was, there was this castle where we would sit in the evenings. And that was the first time where I was really prompted to make the personal decision. Either you're with Jesus, you want him in your life, or you don't, And I had been to a Catholic high school, and I'd been to several Catholic retreats, and this decision-making process, this invitation to make the decision was never made as explicitly as with those Protestant guys there. They're really good at this basic charismatic teaching, where you have to make your personal decision to follow Christ. And I did that. As a lifelong Catholic, I did it with Protestants. And it was something that I really missed at that time, and I still miss it in my church. So this is why I'm telling you this. Maybe you've never experienced such a key decision-making moment in your life. And I made that decision. I'm going to talk about how I made the decision tomorrow. But I'm just telling you the story that I made the decision. I came home from the ski trip and did guess what? Went for a joint with my boss, obviously. It wasn't this, hallelujah, kind of moment in my life where, I would feel something totally change at that very moment. So things did begin to change. I went for that joint, yes, but when I came home, my mom found out, I had red eyes. She said, are you high? And before that decision, my parents being really, really sad about this wouldn't have touched my heart at all. I wouldn't care less, before the decision. But with the decision, Jesus had already began making a change in my heart. It was really from God. It was not from me. I could not have cared less if I was me before the decision. Because you know what they say, if Jesus doesn't make any difference in your life, what difference does it make? Well, Jesus did begin to make a difference in my life. You know, I enrolled college that same year. I stopped smoking cigarettes later that year, which I'd already explained in in a video right at the beginning of this channel. And my point being is this, that, even as lifelong people if we've been going to church all our lives, we still need to make this optio fundamentalis, this basic decision about following Christ. Either you're with him or you reject him. You cannot be lukewarm about him. And so I have an invitation for you tonight. Why don't you go through your life story and just consider, when was the moment when you first made the decision to follow Christ? Obviously, you have to renew this decision day in and day out, all the time. But I believe firmly that there has to be a key moment where you remember making that decision. Maybe there can be an exception to this rule. It would be the really, really pious people who lived with Jesus all of their lives from their childhood on, and they've been to the sacraments, they've done everything right, and they've never felt, a pull away by this world. Maybe these people could be an exception to the rule, but everybody else, normal people, just regular Joes, you have to somehow go back in time and think, when did I decide that I personally, as a grown-up, want to follow Jesus? So this is your task for tonight, and I'll see you again tomorrow, okay? I'm Catholic Ben. I'm glad you're following along. God bless you. May this decision process that you're maybe on it's quite possible if you have not made this decision. Obviously, I'm inviting you in these days to go make it. And so yes, this decision process that you're maybe in right now, I hope it is a tremendous blessing and that you feel God's presence in you, working in your heart. So I'm glad this is happening for you, and I'll see you next time. God bless. Bye-bye.